Hi, and welcome to Knit All the Things. My name is Laura. I'm also known as West Maven on Instagram, Ravelry, and here. If you're new, this is a space where I talk about all the things I'm knitting, all the things I want to knit, all things yarn, just all the things. And if you're returning, welcome back, Knitting Bestie. I can't wait to catch up with you. In this week's episode, we're going to be talking about all things Cloud Blouse, a pattern by PetiteKnit. I had so much fun knitting this sweater. I'm going to share with you whether or not I won at Yarn Chicken. And we are also going to talk about anything that I would change in the future for this if I were to knit it again. I also have one new cast on as well as some updates on previous projects. I am so itching to cast on something new and I have some yarn here to share with you. So grab your knitting, get cozy, and let's go. Hey knitting bestie, I want to share my newest cast off with you, my newest finished object. I have been working on this, I think just over maybe 3 weeks, and it really did fly off the needles. I think it could have been done a little faster, but I started hitting a panic mode partway through, which I'll kind of go over with you, because I wasn't sure I was going to have enough yarn. So the yarn that I used is Noro kompeito in the colorway 1, I think. A or 1. I'll make sure to put the information in the description below. But it is a really cool yarn. It is cotton, silk, I think some nylon, and it's just a really, really, really nice wearing yarn. When I first knit up the swatch and blocked it, it was so soft. This has not been properly blocked. I quickly steam blocked it this morning because I literally finished it at 2 a.m. last night. Don't look at my bags. Okay, but I did stay up late to finish it because I was just so close. I was just like, I can get it done. I don't know if that ever happens to you, but I definitely was so close that I just wanted to get it off the needles. Okay, so the reason I chose this pattern, or rather I was looking for a pattern for this yarn, it was originally purchased for a test knit, which was kind of breaking my rules. I don't normally purchase new yarn for test knits for the simple reason that if something's not working out, I want to just go back to my stash and try to like problem solve with the yarn that I already have rather than investing in a bunch of yarn that may or may not work. So that's typically a rule that I have for myself, and I am pretty, I would say there's only one other time that I purchased yarn for a test knit, and I had already knit the item before in a different version, and so I knew what I was looking for, and so it was very easy for me to go and purchase yarn for that. But anyway, so I had purchased this Noro kompeito yarn for a different pattern. It was for the Pyramid Light, and I just was struggling to make it look nice on the end creases. You knit that in reverse, or inside out, if you will. And so when you're doing your increases, one side looked really nice and the other side just wasn't looking as nice in this yarn. And because this yarn does not really give in any sense, it was just looking very messy and I couldn't live with that. So I switched to a wool yarn for that pattern. But then I had this yarn. I also, in the meantime, had purchased 2 balls instead of just 1 because the yarn requirements changed for that pattern. So I had this yarn sitting in my stash that was new and shiny and definitely something I wanted to use, but I was struggling to find the right pattern, particularly because if you notice, it's very stripy. It's not like obviously stripy like a self-striping yarn, but there is color stripes within the sweater, and I wasn't sure how that would look in a lot of different patterns. So originally one of the thoughts I had was, oh, I will do a kind of not a drop shoulder. I will do like I guess kind of a drop shoulder where you knit the front and the back, but it had more of a scoop neck, if you will. And so in the front, your 2 fronts were gonna look slightly different because you're gonna like pick up stitches, knit part way, and then pick up stitches and knit part way, and then knit across. So you're gonna have one shoulder that's weird. That would bother me. I also was thinking raglan And then your stripes would do the kind of stripy raglan corner thing. And I wasn't sure I was going to love that. I had gone through thinking of various bottom up sweaters with like lace or like something here in the chest area to like camouflage some of the things I didn't like. So there's a lot of different options out there that I considered doing a circle or a circular yoke, but I just wasn't finding a pattern that it was like screaming at me. So I kind of went back to Ravelry and I decided to search under gauge because I knew what I wanted the gauge to be like because I had swatched for that previous sweater. And so I started there and I ended up coming across the Cloud Blouse pattern by PetiteKnit. Hers is knit in mohair held double, I believe. And so it's a very different vibe from the sweater, but I knew that the construction of the sweater was essentially what I was looking for. So the construction on this, you start with the back panel, you form your shoulders. Okay, so for the construction of this sweater, you do pick up one shoulder, then you pick up the other shoulder, which was a hesitation I had. But because it's only a few rows and you're working short rows, you're still kind of keeping the stripe pattern. And I didn't feel like it was that noticeable because it wasn't a very large surface. And I was able to, just the way that the yarn worked out, it ended up kind of mirroring itself. It's not super noticeable. And then you start knitting across for the front, and then you knit your arms, and then you join in the round, knit the body, and then come back, pick up the sleeves in the round. So, and then you do a neckline, and that's it. So when I was knitting this, I finished the front and the back, and then started in the round. And then I think maybe right around like this green line, I finished my first ball of yarn. And so I knew I had quite a bit of sweater left to knit and the sleeves for the second ball of yarn. Granted, the balls of yarn are like 460 yards, I think. If I'm wrong, I'll pop it on the screen. And I want to say they're about 150 gram balls, and mine were a little bit more. Part of the interesting thing about this yarn too, I'll mention real quickly, I saved a little tiny piece. When you're knitting it, it pulls apart quite easily if you're not careful. So if you were to snag it, you're gonna have some issues. But once it's knitted, you're not running into that. So I was real careful not to like break the yarn too many times. There were some knots in one of my balls. I think had one knot, and then the other one had like 3. But just the nature of the yarn, I don't think you'll ever notice it, even if it pops through. I think I was able to keep them mostly on the inside, but I don't think you would be able to tell. The neck band and the arm, I guess finishing, I can't think of the name, wristband, have some 1x1 ribbing and then a knitted thing to have this kind of like little roll where it rolls up on itself, which I think is nice. The same, and this neckline is slightly different than the pattern. It's not as tall. So as I was running out of yarn, I finished the body and I looked at my yarn and I had 90 grams, maybe 92 grams of yarn left for both the sleeves and the neckband. And I kind of panicked because I, didn't take into consideration the neckband at all. I actually just I broke that up into 46 gram balls for my sleeves. And I was like, I'm just going to go until I can't go anymore. And I did not knit them as long as the pattern. However, just the nature of the yarn again is so drapey and stretchy that even the steam block just made them long enough. Like it was probably like here-ish and that would have been okay, but it ended up being longer. And I have a funny story about the sleeve, but we'll get back to that because I feel like I'm a little all over the place today. Okay, so I was running out of yarn. Part of me, after I did the first sleeve, looked at the sleeve and thought, oh, I could have started decreases, like had them more frequent so that the sleeve was less blousey, and that would have given me more yardage in theory. Like the sleeve could be longer that way. And so that was my backup plan in my mind just after I knit one sleeve. The other thing with a drop shoulder sweater, say that 10 times fast, is that when you're picking up stitches, like when I first tried this on, it looked like it was like this. And then you're picking up stitches and I'm like, oh, like this is not gonna be working. But as you wear your sweater and as it kind of, the steam blocking helped, it molds more to your body. And then this is certainly lower on your arm and the whole thing is starting to fit better. So I finished one and I'm like, I never did the neckline. What am I doing with my life? So because I finished one and this was the length, I think I got 60 creases in. I think on my size it was supposed to be 8 or 9. So if that even begins to tell you how much shorter these sleeves are. Hers, if you look at her pictures, are definitely more scrunched up on her arm, and it is a long sleeve, which I actually do prefer. But again, this is fine. So I finished sleeve 1 and thought, well, this will be fine, I guess. I can definitely make the second sleeve the same and I'll be happy with that sweater. But what am I gonna do for the neckline? Because the neckline is, I won't have enough. What am I doing? So what I did, the neckline again was supposed to be taller. I believe at least twice as tall, but I just didn't have enough yarn. So what I did was, it is a funnel neckline and it's just you re-pick up the stitches and then you just knit and then you bind off. So it's very simple. It does a little roll. I think that looks really nice. But I didn't have enough yarn after I would have knit my sleeves. So I basically put everything on hold, left one arm, and then switched to the neckband. And I decided that I was going to use my swatch. So I pulled my swatch apart very carefully because, as I just showed you, the yarn, if you're not careful, will pull apart. So I very carefully undid my swatch. I literally just knit off the swatch and did the neckline. And I went until it looked like I was going to have to cast off. And I think I ended up getting, I don't know, I think it was about half the amount of rows that I should have had. And I think it looks fine. I think that's fine. And then I really just eyeballed things. So when I was going along, I did my 60 creases and I thought, ooh, I'm gonna need, you know, X amount of rows to finish this sleeve off. Does that look like it's gonna work? And thankfully, I must have eagle eyes because it all worked out. Like I had no yarn left. And that worked out for sleeve 1. So for sleeve 2, I already in my mind knew that in theory, I should have enough yarn, given I think my sleeve 2 yarn was a little bit heavier than my sleeve 1. And so I think it was like 46.7 and this one was like 46.2 or something crazy like that. And I ended up with not much yarn. So I don't know, I guess I could, if I really wanted to, I could add this to the neckline, but I think I would only get like one more row and then a bind off perhaps, but I just don't think it's necessary. I think it's fine. So long story short, I used 2 balls of the Noro kompeito for this sweater. If I also had considered, here's the sleeve story. So I had considered doing short sleeves and I had knit them, I don't know, like this long or so on my arm. And I tried it on and I showed my husband and he was like, oh, this reminds me of a football coach. I can't think of his first name, but Belichick. I know if you know football, which I don't, this person might pop into your mind, but I guess he always cut his sleeves off. And so they were like kind of bigger than his arm. And I was like, what he did? And he's like, that's what it looks like to me. And I said, okay, well, we're not doing that. And I decided to do sleeves. My other thought would have been no sleeves at all and then just bind off like right at the body. I think that would have looked really nice. And I might make a second one and do something like that, or just do like some ribbing and then bind off, and I think that would look cute. One really cool, I would say, thing about this sweater is the pearl bump kind of lines. It adds just a little bit. When you pick up, you do a little couple of pearl bump rows, and that looks really nice, I think. I just really, overall, I really think this yarn and this sweater is a perfect combo. I really couldn't have been happier with how it turned out. I think that it turned out kind of what I had in my imagination, which is always nice. Again, if this was like tiny bit longer, I wouldn't hate it, but I'm gonna wet block this. So I have some hope that I could just stretch it a little bit longer when I wet block it, like wet block it a little bit longer rather than wider. And I think that will do the trick. So that is my Cloud Blouse, a pattern by PetiteKnit. She has several cloud patterns. I believe there is a cloud tank and a cloud tee. She just came out with a cloud tee, and the cloud tee has sleeves that are like this long, but it's the same construction. So yeah, I like it. I probably, if I were to do it again, one thing I would probably consider doing if I had this exact yarn and this exact situation, I would have probably done my decreases way more rapidly by like, I think I could have done maybe a third more often, and that would have given me a much more fitted sleeve, and it would have been longer. Like that would really be the solution, I think. And I almost did it with my second sleeve to see if I liked that solution, and then I would have undid the sleeve and then reknit it. And I still could. But I'm gonna block it first and see how that looks, because if it looks fine, then I'm not reknitting anything, because I reknit enough stuff from mistakes. So yeah, I like it. I really recommend the pattern. It's very easy to understand. The rate of you have a rate of pickup for your sleeves, and I think that can be difficult for some people, but she tells you what the rate of pickup should, in theory, be. And if you follow that, you should be fine. I also real quickly forgot to mention the puppies are in the room with me, as they are always, so if you hear any weird noises, it's probably them. Okay, so next up is another PetiteKnit pattern, and I don't normally, well, I try not to normally knit two patterns from the same person like right next to each other, but it just had happened that that's what happened. So I think about a year ago, I had purchased this pattern and I was super excited to knit it. I will mention that it only goes to, I think, a 3X, but I do find that typically if her patterns are not quite size inclusive, they will be eventually. They typically go back and update them with larger sizes as time goes by. But this particular pattern is the Cumulus Tee, and it is a stockinette stitch V-neck t-shirt. And I finished 2 balls of pure silk knitting for Olive, which is like so much fun to knit with. And I decided I was going to pause and do the I-cord on the neck. And here's my issue. This is actually, I think, what slowed this project down. I should probably block or steam block this to see if I like how it's laying, number 1. But number 2, it's very heavy. It's like a heavy I-cord. I'm not loving how it's looking right now. Maybe it will look better once it's blocked, but if it doesn't, then I'm going to rip it out and do a thinner I-cord, because I was actually really loving how this was looking up until I did that. That kind of almost ruined it for me. So right now I am again knitting in the round. My plan is to finish this ball of yarn and then start sleeves and then go back and finish the body, just to like keep switching it up. It's okay. So this is knit on a US 2.5, I believe. And so it is very tedious. I actually, when I purchased this pattern, I purchased the pattern, I bought the yarn. I think I even got it from Knitting for Olive. It was shipped to me. I was so excited. I had the needle and the pattern and the yarn and everything all in a project bag. And then I went on to Ravelry just to like see what anyone else was saying, just in case there was something I should have in the back of my mind as I'm starting this project. And as I was clicking through, it looked like not many people enjoyed the process of knitting this because it was tiny needles and it was just stockinette, which is understandable. But reading that actually made me hit pause and not cast it on right away. So this has been sitting kind of in a bag, not the sweater, but the yarn and all the stuff had been sitting in a bag for about a year before I decided to pick it up and actually cast it on. I'm really glad I did. I think it is going to be really nice when it's done. It will be unremarkable. Like there's not anything, like I could probably wear this anywhere and no one's gonna be like, oh, did you make that? Like that's not gonna happen. But it is going to be an awesome addition to my wardrobe. It's obviously my favorite color. It's going to wear really nicely. I will be able to wear something that I made with an outfit, which I think is always really nice. All that to say, I'm not hating this. I'm not like, it's not my favorite. I do think she has one other pattern, the Cumulus Tee, which is, I believe, new this year. And it's a crew neck striped tee. I'll pop a picture in maybe there. And I'm thinking I have a lot of like now kind of summer yarn scraps that I could potentially just make a scrappy tee out of. I'm not sure. So I'm just kind of on a, I don't know. I'm taking this in the car with me wherever I go now that this is finished. And I'm just going to kind of continue on and hopefully get this done quickly. I mean, I have about half of a body and sleeves, so it's not anywhere near done. But man, I was joking with my friend. I was like, oh, I should just crop top. We're done. Joking. I wouldn't feel comfortable myself wearing that, but I know that it looks very cute on many people. So I'm sure I think the pattern calls for like 250 grams of yarn. And I think I've knit 100 and some. So I have quite a bit to go. It is what it is. It will be fine. We'll like it. We'll enjoy it. Okay, so I would say the only thing about the Cumulus Tee to maybe keep in mind is that it is going to be a little bit of a time-consuming project, but I look at it like socks now. That it's just something that is now just knit in the round. I will say I was just trying to get to the point where I was knitting in the round. And once I got there, I was feeling like much more positive about it. And again, I think that if I go ahead and steam block this or even just block it, maybe I won't hate it as much. It just felt like chunky all of a sudden, at least to me. So PetiteKnit, she knows her stuff. So I'm going to trust for now. And it's fine. And if it's not, then I will just rip out the I-cord and put a thinner one in. I would probably do, I'm trying to think, I might just do half. Because I do feel like it needs something. It needs something to like finish off that edge. Even though I think the edge does look nice, it still needs something to like kind of keep it laying flat. But I just think this is right now feeling like a little bit overkill. So I again searched Ravelry to see if anybody else felt the same way, and I didn't really notice anything. So who knows? We'll find out. Maybe it's just me. So that's what I have going on so far, and I'm anxiously awaiting when this is finished. Again, it is kind of one of those projects where I'm gonna love it. I don't think it's flashy by any means, or it's kind of like socks. I think it's fun. It's useful. They have an end purpose, but it's boring-ish. And normally, even my black knits are kind of fun, so I don't know. I think it's just one of those things. Okay, so I'm gonna just quickly flash my progress on this because I feel like it's gonna be it's such a long haul process that I don't even remember what it looked like last time. But here is my progress on my Pina Colada. This is a pattern by Zukaite featured in a Pom Pom magazine, issue 45, and I really like it a lot. I think this again, so much like this, I think once this is blocked, it's kind of going to do a little bit more stretching, like up and down rather than side to side, or I guess you could kind of make it go either way. But in my mind, and maybe it's because I'm lazy, I'm like, ooh, maybe we should start trying to like see if it's gonna like lay nice this way, because that will mean I'm getting more done faster, if that makes any sense. I also, in the time since the last podcast, and this is such a tangled mess right now, I realized that because I'm knitting flat, I was using my Addy metal click needles, my interchangeable needles, and I had it come open on me more than once because this lace, when you're like kind of pushing it on the needle, it kept catching every so often, and it would, like, I would somehow twist and like be pushing and it would catch and undo the click. I actually hadn't had any like catastrophes, but it still is a pain trying to get these little tiny lace pieces back onto the needle. And so I just decided to switch out for a Chow Gu that I had in the right size. So now it actually feels like it's going a bit quicker. So maybe that has like made this a more enjoyable project. I also know that you guys have been cheering me on so much, and I have been wanting to like get it done for both of us because I know that a lot of you want to see what it looks like when it's done, as do I. One thing I have been doing, which I don't think I've mentioned yet, is I have been weaving in the ends as I go. So as you can see right here, there's some that need to be done, but I go a couple of diamonds and then I go back and I weave in all the ends and then continue on. So I'm hoping that just keeping that in practice is going to make the end, when I'm finally done, so much faster, instead of having to like stare at the back of this going, ugh, why am I doing this with all the ends? So I have been doing that. It also keeps it cleaner for me to actually see what's going on a little bit better with my work. And yeah, so this is an Intarsia bottom up in pieces sweater, and I hope that I've popped in a picture, but if I haven't, I could quickly show you. So it's gonna have that. So it is a drop shoulder, again, in pieces. Even the sleeves are in pieces for that Intarsia. Although I really was thinking, I don't know, it would be small circumference, so maybe that should be why I wouldn't do it. But in theory, I could just knit the sleeves in the round with the Intarsia, but then I have to worry about the small circumference. So maybe I won't. That's probably a bad idea. Let's not make it more complicated and add more tiers if it's not necessary. Next up, I had shared this Wandering Flock yarn. It is their Cotton Lino in Burnt Sienna, and it is 35% organic cotton, 30% silk, and 20% linen, and 15% baby alpaca. It's very soft. It's very squishy for a cotton yarn. And I asked your guys' help and finally chose the Hashibami by Ririko. And I cast it on, and it starts with a twisted cast on, and then you start into this big lace yoke. The pattern's really easy. It's both written and charted. And I haven't really gotten enough of the lace to like make a decision on if I love it or don't. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure this is the right yarn for this project. I just don't know. I'm feeling some hesitation. Obviously, I'm gonna do a little bit more. I also will say, like, I was very hesitant about this color, and now, like, the more I see it, the more I am liking it. So that's good. But yeah, so my other thought, and something that had popped up on my feed on Ravelry of new patterns, and also on Instagram, I actually saw her teasing this, was the pattern Drevo. It's the Drevo pullover, and it is a interesting construction, and this pattern is from Teti Lutsak, and she uses a sport weight yarn, which this is, and hers is a long sleeve pullover. And it has this really interesting construction where it creates almost, well, it does create like a V-neck in the front and the back, but it's just where you're increasing is very different than like a traditional raglan or a traditional type of sweater. And so it creates this really cool, almost squared yoke. And she has like almost a cable type of situation going on. And I don't know if it's cable or lace, but it's really pretty. And then there is more ribbing and then sleeves. And the sleeves are stockinette. So one of her testers decided not to put sleeves on it. And she just had like a vest or like a slip over, I guess we could call it, and left the sleeves off. And I thought, oh, that's really cute. I, in my mind, think in this yarn it could be really nice, which is the only reason I did pause a little bit, because I was actually getting along on this going, oh, this is super fun. I'm really enjoying this. I have marked like where my lace sections are and everything. And it's very manageable. It's super easy to memorize. Like I read the first repeat and I'm like, got it. And then go on. Like I'm not feeling like I'm lost. So from that perspective, it's all really nice things. But this sweater came up and I thought, oh, this could also look nice. Couple of hesitations. One, this I think is going to be a very drapey fabric, and maybe her Drevo pullover would really be more suited to a woolier yarn. She used Retrosario Vovo, which is a wool, and I probably won't cast that on, but I certainly was very tempted. So we'll see. I might cast it on. I actually thought it would either be super nice in Brooklyn Tweeds Imbue Sport or Ritual Dyes Sprite, which is a sport base. I think those would actually like really be amazing in that. So who knows, maybe that's in my future, but for now I'm enjoying this pattern. And it is a very deep yoke. So I do think I'm going to be trying it on as I go. And if it's looking not quite right, because a couple of people did mention on the Hashibami that the yoke was a little bit too deep on them. And so I kind of think I'm going to keep that in mind. So I don't know. I think there might be some modifications coming up with this. Maybe there won't be. Maybe it will be fine on me, but it is something to keep in mind. It is also because this is kind of, I would say it's a summer yarn. And so part of me is thinking I should do something a little more summery than that. I was going to do short sleeves, but again, I just don't know. I think I'm on the fence, and I don't know why I'm kind of petering out on my excitement. I don't know what's going on with that, but something's kind of creating a pause. Part of it was wanting to finish this, but I finished this and I was like, okay, I just want to finish my other PetiteKnit sweater rather than like grab this new fun thing. So that's kind of a weird thing for me, and I'm trying to figure out what that's all about. So I don't know, but that's kind of where I'm at with that. If you have any feedback, let me know. If you're like, you should start over and do the Drevo pullover right now, let me know. If you're like, nope, stick with the Hashibami, we love it, again, let me know. Because I think I need a little push. Someone push me. I need you to push me in the right direction on this one, I think. Okay, so I purchased some yarn, and I'm very excited to show you. So I got the La Bien Aimée Merino Sport in the colorway Amy's Flashy Lipstick, which is like a hot pink red situation. It's got some red in it, but it's like a very vibrant pink. And then I purchased this Opia Dyed in the Wool by Spin Cycle when I went to Sacred Sheep. So I think those are gonna look pretty together. And part of me is like a creature of habit and was like, oh, I should just do another Miserina in wool because I don't have one in wool. But I do have two. I have a linen one and I have a cotton merino one. And then I also have thoughts of the Geometer sweater by Lotta Lothgren. And I think this is a really pretty option as well. There's something about it though, I don't know if it reads more like super winter, because I have enough yarn for a tee. So I don't know if that's like really the right thing for this, but I could be wrong. The other thing, I could just do a tank top in this color because I just think it's a pretty color. So I'm not sure what I'm doing with this yet, but I really have been looking for a nice color work tee that would kind of look nice with it. I bought this spin cycle. I wanted one of the darker skeins, but it is a little hard to match like with something for it to look, I think, correct. So we'll see. I think these will look really nice together and will pop. Like, I'm afraid like if I did too navy or too purple, it would actually like just blend in and be too low contrast, but I think this will look good. So I'm kind of in the search for a pattern for these, and a couple have popped up, but I do want it to be a size inclusive pattern because there has been a couple where I was like, oh, that one's kind of nice, but it just wasn't size inclusive. And this year in particular, I'm trying to make sure that everything I'm knitting is kind of falls into that category. So if you think of something that you think I'm gonna love, let me know on that one. Okay, so I think that we have chatted a lot, and I will fill you in on the chaos that is this house. In the last couple of weeks, life has been crazy. We have been at doctor's offices more than normal, and so I've had weird car knitting time. We've definitely visited every park in the vicinity, just as like to keep people busy and happy. So it's been busy in different ways than I'm used to. And then yesterday, we have crows in Portland, and we have a family that I believe built a nest in our large tree in the backyard. And if you know all about crows, great, but if you don't, let me give you a quick thing. A couple of things about crows. One important thing to note is that crows remember everything. This is not like me being superstitious. They actually remember everything, which I'll tell you a quick story to prove. And then secondly, when baby crows are old enough not to fly, but getting there, the parents shove them out of the nest and then they take care of them on the ground while they're building up their flight wing muscles. Thanks. And so they remember everything. A few years ago in the previous home, there was a crow that I found. Now I'm thinking it probably was a fledgling, the baby crows, on the sidewalk, and it had died. And I thought, oh, it was in front of our house and we lived in a kind of busy area, and I thought I should probably do something about this. And so I disposed of it in the middle of the day. And the crows were going nuts, and they didn't appreciate that. So after that time, for years, if I went outside, it would get super loud, like all the crows would be going off. And if I was on a walk anywhere near and around my house, they would like fly super low at my head, like aggressively. So that wasn't great. Up until we moved, like it was all the time. And then, so yesterday during the summer, I set up like a blow up pool for the kids, and we had doctor's appointments. So we were at a doctor's appointment, and we came home and we found, unfortunately, a fledgling that had fallen into the pool and died. And so you can't, like, I learned my lesson that I wasn't going to just like do anything about it, because crows need to understand, I guess, what happens. So they all are flying in, checking it out. It's a big, huge ruckus. And so I'm trying to keep the kids not in the backyard yesterday. And essentially what you want to do is you leave it alone. And late last night, we took it out of the pool, let all the water out. We're done with that for this year. We're done. Because I'm afraid that if there's more fledglings, I don't want anyone else to fall in the pool. So I'm hoping that if there are, we're solving that problem. But it was definitely like a very weird operation trying to be like, just leave it alone, I guess, all day, even though you really want to like do something immediately. At least I do. So all that to say, it was chaos over here. But today the crows are nice. They don't seem offended by anything. And since they don't know that we moved it, I think that just like dissipated the situation. So hopefully, if you ever come across a crazy crow situation, that'll help you. Otherwise, I finished the mole yesterday. I finished the last couple of episodes for the latest season of The Mole on Netflix, and that was amazing. I've watched Hannah Berner's We Ride at Dawn comedy on Netflix, which was really funny, and I have been listening to audiobooks. I've listened to 2 in the last couple of weeks. One is This Ends With Us by Colleen something. I'll pop a picture. I'm starting another one. I think there's another one in the series. I just got it from the library, so I haven't started it yet, but it's a little risque, but it's really good. Okay, so that's kind of what I've got been doing and have going on. I really do need your help deciding if I should continue on with the Hashibami or if I should switch to the other pattern. And feedback on if you have a colorwork sweater that I can just make a tee that's either sport weight or fingering that you really like, let me know. So I was considering one of Caitlin Hunter's patterns just because they work really well. Typically it only needs like 1 skein of what is a spin cycle. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. I don't want something that needs a ton of spin cycle. I don't want anything that really has it at the bottom of the sweater. For some reason, I'm just not a fan of colorwork at the bottom. So those parameters, if you got something, send it to me. I would love to hear what you have. And as always, I love hearing what you're working on. I love hearing from you. So please leave comments below because I read each and every one of them. Other than that, if we're not yet knitting besties, please make sure to hit the subscribe button and like this video. It tells YouTube that other fiber enthusiasts like yourself enjoy this type of content. Until 2 weeks from now, happy knitting. Bye.
Baby, you give me ice and fire. You're giving me wind and rain. You're some kind of butterfly. Baby, you give me midnight. You whip up my appetite.